Hello, everybody. Welcome back to How Come. I hope you all had a really good week. I had a really nice week talking to a lot of you. I feel like I was just on the Instagram all week, complaining about the fact that we don't have very many ratings and reviews given the ton of people who listen to this podcast. And I was kind of like upset about it, and I made stories about it, and a lot of you slid into my DMs being like, listen, like the reason I haven't rated it is because I don't have iTunes, or I like didn't rate it because I thought it would show my name and I'm like embarrassed or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, I totally get that. But it turns out iTunes does not show your name. You can pick your name. So if that's the thing that's holding you back, please rate, review, and subscribe, because it really does make us feel really good. And ultimately, it's a free thing that you can do to help this podcast. We put in a lot of work. We put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, and like a lot of love. And I totally understand if you guys aren't comfortable sharing the podcast on your social media. I really do. But if you could rate, review, and subscribe right now, because we don't have any ads this week. So let's make just a little, like, sometimes when you invite someone over to do homework and like they don't even help you, they're just there. Or like I'll invite my friends over to like watch me clean my room. I'm like, don't help me, just be there and watch me. Okay, so I'm gonna be here while you go to, okay, so see your podcast app there? Yeah. Okay, so we are clicking on it. We are searching How Come. It doesn't come up first, even though we've subscribed. Why? Or could we be shadow banned? Yes. Yeah, on everything. That's why we need our supporters to support us. And I know you guys do. So, okay, yeah, here we are. Now we've gotten How Come. We're clicking on it. There's Remy in that photo that she really wanted to seem like she was lying down in, but everybody can tell she's upright. All right, so now we're scrolling down. We're scrolling down to the bottom of the page. We are rating 5 stars, please. And then we are reviewing, or, you don't even have to right now. Actually, pause me and review it. But like, here are some nice things that you could say. This is a very sex positive podcast. Everybody should listen to it. Oh my God, so funny and learning at the same time. You guys, I didn't feel comfortable with my body until this podcast, and now I am straight up fucking, or whatever you want to say something nice. Thank you even to the person who, like, I was like pleading on my Instagram. I was like, please, can I have some like reviews? And then this person, I'm sure some of you already saw this story, wrote the review with the title Mouth Noises, and was just like, I can't handle your mouth noises. We can hear all the spit in your mouth. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you fucking talking about? I don't even know. I can't even make that many mouth noises. It actually does disgust me, and like I don't want to gross anybody out who has misophonia, because hating sounds is real. But yeah, even if you want to write a bad review, just give us 5 stars. We ultimately just want to move up higher on these charts. This podcast hasn't been on the charts in quite some time, especially after I was like making the vow of like, I'm not going to book people just because they have followers. Like, I want important people. And that was great, and I still stand by that. But I would love to be on the charts so that other people can discover us, and that we can help humans. Ooh, excuse me. Now that is a mouth noise no one needed to hear, but I'm keeping it in. Anyway, so thank you to you guys who have been like super supportive and like basically like my best friends this week, because yeah, I love you and I feel really supported. And also some of you like reminded me that they were like, ratings and reviews aren't everything. Like, just, you all sound like elves now. Ratings and reviews aren't everything. But the fact that people are downloading it means a lot. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's awesome. I fucking love it. It's just, the conversation doesn't get normalized until it's like a very commonplace conversation. And the fact that people are still finding out about this podcast being like, oh my God, that exists. Like, yeah, we just need more humans who know about it, specifically vulva owners, but also penis owners. Like, everybody just needs to be better at sex and hear this podcast. That's my opinion. Okay. Another opinion of mine is that today's guest is amazing and that you will learn lots of things from this episode. Today's guest is Erica Spera. She is a comedian and co-host of the Shooters Gotta Shoot podcast, which is an amazing podcast. And Erica is an amazing comedian, one of my favorite ones in New York. She's been named one of TBS Comics to Watch, has been featured in Forbes, Business Insider, Refinery 29, and on TLC's Cake Boss. She runs a herpes support group, which we're going to tell you all about. And yeah, she has another whole podcast with Lisa Velastro, her cousin, from Cake Boss. And they sit down to share family stories from behind the scenes of Cake Boss and their family. So if you like Cake Boss, you should listen to that podcast. And yeah, today we're talking about herpes because Erica runs the support group. She has herpes, and it is a really important topic. STIs in general, we haven't really covered as much as we would like to, and we're definitely going to go into more after this. We did have a herpes episode that was a live show that's been on Patreon for like a year now, patreon.com/howcome, with comedians Abby Rosenquist, Joe List, and Sarah Armour. Very, very funny episode, but also not as medically accurate as we'd like to put out. And so this episode is funny and also medically accurate and amazing. And I think you're really, really going to like it. So yeah, if you haven't rated, reviewed, or subscribed, I'm waiting. The whole class doesn't get to hear the podcast unless, no, I'm just kidding. You please, if you have time to do it in your spare time. And yeah, I love you and I hope you enjoy this episode.
How come? How come? How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help. 'Cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna jizz.
Hello, Erica Spera. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on.
You don't know how many people have requested we talk about herpes, like over and over and over again. It turns out everybody has it. So you have a wildly successful podcast. It came out like only last year. I will never forget the launch party because you guys had a cake box cake with both of your faces on it. It was like the most epic podcast launch I've ever been to. How's the pod going and like how are you guys doing this year?
Oh, thanks. It's going great because, I mean, as you know, a lot of people have herpes. So
yep. Yeah.
Every week I get emails from people that's like, hey, I have herpes. I searched for podcasts on it. I found yours. Like, thanks for talking about it. But yeah, I mean, we mainly had the launch party because it was weirdly like a coming out party for me. I just ripped the Band-Aid off of being public about herpes. And I was like, I'm going to need a party to kind of not just sit in my room panicking all night.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I just told the world. You know?
No, it was like, it was interesting to me because you are not one of the comics that does herpes like jokes at all, or you didn't before.
Yeah, I didn't have any at the time.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I know at least 20 comics that have herpes and none of them have a podcast about herpes. And then here comes Erica Spera.
I was like terrified. Yeah.
When did you find out that you had herpes? Like, what was that process like?
So I just celebrated a 4-year anniversary of the herp this summer.
Mazel tov.
I had an outbreak basically a week after I contracted it. I was seeing someone. We had sex. A week later, I had a couple bumps. I was like, what's this? Wake up the next morning. 2 bumps turned into like 5 or 6. You're like, okay, something's off. And I obviously was panicking because I was like, I haven't slept with someone in like almost a year.
Yeah.
So it was very like, clearly that happened recently.
You're like, this one?
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, man, you're dating somebody. You're finally like, oh, okay. And then boom. And I panicked and I like just went to like a walk-in real quick. They basically were like, oh, we'll just take like your blood test. But they just immediately were like, this is herpes. Like they looked at it for 1 second. They're like, yeah, it's probably herpes. Went into their whole spiel. And I was like, whoa, like back up.
Yeah.
Like, can you look at that again? That was real quick, you know?
Because had you had any friends that you knew of who had it?
Not any close friends.
Not just comics.
Yeah, like I knew of comedians that would talk about it, but comedy is like high school where you would want to talk to those people, but you're also like, if I'm not tight with them, I don't know if I trust them knowing.
And you shouldn't.
So, yeah, it's
especially like if you think it's a big deal and you're not ready to like talk about it yet and you feel like very alone.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was clean in comedy. I didn't talk about sex or dating at all. Actually, my first like 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got herpes, and it was like, what are you going to be, a clean comedian with herpes? Like now you're really lying to the world, you know?
I should tell the listeners, clean in this case means working clean, aka no sex material, no F-bombs or whatever. Not this show. There was a day that we did a bunch of Instagram polls on STDs, and we accidentally worded it like, would you ask somebody if they were clean? And people get very, very rightfully so, like triggered by that word, because it's like, wait, so if I have an STD, I'm dirty?
Right. I've used that before too. Or I've had, I like went on a couple dates with somebody and we hooked up and he knew I had herpes. But then when it came to the no condom conversation, he was like, I got tested last week, I'm clean. And I was like, yeah, that's not like... Yeah, I was like, that doesn't necessarily immediately mean I don't want to use condoms, you know, not even because of herpes. This is new. I'm not on birth control. Like, I was like, I don't care if you're clean. Like, I don't have any backup over here. So condoms are a must, you know?
Yeah, but STDs we don't love. STIs is what we're calling them now, because like most of the time it's not a disease, you know, like there's many, many different STIs. Some of them are chronic, some of them go away. Herpes is one of the ones that is chronic, but I still wouldn't say like you're not clean, you know, like you're one of the cleanest people I know.
Yeah, I mean, that was the part that was annoying. I was like, man, all the sex I could have been having at certain times, and I was like trying to behave myself, and then I still ended up with herpes, and it was like, fuck it, what am I doing?
Dude, I got HPV from the first guy I fucked. And then after I got out of a 3-year relationship, the next guy I fucked gave me chlamydia. Like,
oh Jesus.
Anytime that I'm like, oh, it's just one person, it'll be fine. It's like, it's not fine.
I don't even have HPV yet. Isn't that wild?
That's awesome.
But it's just like, I got herpes, no HPV, never had another STI. Crazy.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, technically, I would say herpes is technically a disease in the way that like alcoholism is a disease, where even though you get it under control, you still have it the rest of your life. So in that category, I guess I would kind of count it.
Yeah. Totally. And it's something that you have to manage and take pills for.
To be honest, I don't take meds for it.
You don't?
No, and it's something that, this is like the bright side of going long periods of time like without having a partner, is you can kind of experiment with daily meds. Basically, the advice I got from a doctor, it was the very first year. He was like, take the daily meds for a year, and then you most likely won't have an outbreak ever again. And I was lucky that I was like on health insurance and it was covered. So I was like, okay. And also, you're just terrified. Like the first outbreak is bad and you're so scared to give it to anybody. So I was like, for sure, I'm taking this pill rest of my life, right?
Yeah.
And then I hit the point, I think I was like out of the prescription or something, and I joined this little support group of women with herpes, and a lot of them wouldn't take it daily. They would only start taking it if they started seeing someone, or like they would play around with it. And so I was like, all right, let me try not taking it. I'm not seeing anyone. And I haven't had an outbreak since the first one. And I pretty much don't take it unless, like recently I went on a couple dates with someone. I started taking it a little bit to be like, okay, extra precaution. Because that's the number one thing that does protect transmission for it. There's this site that has this chart, and it like breaks down the percentage of getting herpes. And it's like, okay, taking the meds and using a condom is like 1%. Taking the meds and not using a condom is 2%. So it's like condoms don't really protect you from it. Because it's not transmitted.
We hate to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. Like, especially, I have type 1, and the person that gave it to me never had signs. So we don't know if he has it orally or if he has it genitally.
Oh.
So I could have got it from him going down on me. We don't know, because he's never had cold sores or an outbreak.
Can we explain type 1 and type 2 to people, just for anybody who...
So I have type 1 genitally. And I even had to explain this to, I just had a new primary care. And she was like, why would you take the meds for oral herpes? And I was like, no, I have type 1, but on my genitals.
Yeah.
Which you can get either one in different areas. But the main difference in why there's 2 types is because typically type 1 is on your mouth and type 2 is on your genitals. Because we've rebranded type 1 as cold sores. Yeah. So even people I know that like get tested, suddenly find out they have type 1, the doctor always goes, oh, you don't have the bad kind of herpes. And it's like, no, they don't have herpes. It's the same.
Yeah.
That partly, adds to the stigma. Is everyone's like, oh, cold sores, no big deal. And I'm like, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Yeah, that's
the same exact thing.
we had a live show about herpes where we had Sarah Armour, Abby Rosenquist, and Joe List, who all have herpes, and we never put it out because like it was a little too jokey.
Oh, okay.
But what the conclusion that I came to after hearing everybody is like herpes sounds like a skin condition.
It is. You're actually supposed to go to a dermatologist for it.
Yeah, like it's just for some reason I always pictured it like massive, like open, like oozy, like spider bites basically, but it's like having like an acne outbreak.
Yeah, it's like an acne outbreak where it's like little pimples, kind of like a rash in a way. But your very first outbreak is the worst and it's the most painful, and that's the differentiation too, is like type 2 is much more painful and you typically will have more frequent outbreaks if you have type 2. But again, it depends on the person. Like I know people that have type 1 that get outbreaks whenever they're stressed. And I know people with type 2 that only had the first one, similar to me. So it really does vary, but that's what's just so hard. That first outbreak, all you could think is like, oh, I never want to give this to somebody. So It takes you a very long time to get comfortable yourself having sex with someone, let alone finding someone to have sex with you.
So just for you guys who are listening, HSV1 or oral herpes causes cold sores around the mouth and face and sometimes genital sores. Oral herpes is usually acquired in early childhood, which is everybody had it, I feel like, or adolescence from non-sexual contact with saliva. It can also be spread to the genitals through oral sex, so very lucky that a man would even go down on you. HV2 is genital herpes, is sexually transmitted, spread by vaginal, anal, or oral sex with an infected person, and causes sores around the genitals, buttocks, and anus. HSV2 can sometimes cause mouth sores as well. So I think the reason why people would say the bad one is just because like sex is viewed so negatively, like in our culture, that it's like, ooh, this one you didn't get from the playground. This one you got in like a playroom.
Right? Or it's like I could, I guess, technically be a virgin with herpes if I got it from someone going down on me.
100%.
And like, oh, does that make me less, like, less dirty? It's stupid.
Definitely
because
not.
People, I know many people, especially from doing my podcast, that have messaged me being like, no, I have type 2 on my mouth. They're like, you can get both everywhere. And I'm like, oh, I know that. Like, I'm aware, but.
And the treatment of them, is it like any different?
No.
No.
And you know what else? Yeah, it's just like Valtrex or a generic kind of it. So it's the same exact treatment for both. That's why it's kind of nuts.
It's just like, how can I judge you? Like, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or my favorite question, someone's like, you have herpes? How did you get it? I'm like, from having sex.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think I'm doing?
From licking a toilet. Like, how else?
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get comfortable again with someone else? And like,
oh man, that it's hard because it's like the first year, 2 years, I just had so many rejections from it, and there's really nothing you can like really do about it. And that's the number one concern I get from people, is like, how do you tell people you have it? It's like, well, there is no right and no wrong way, because I've had people never get rejected that I know, and I have people like me that got a lot of rejections. But I was like, from when I first got it, my number one mistake was I stayed with that guy just because we both had herpes.
I've heard that one before.
That's the biggest mistake, is not only did I stay with him, but then a year later I ended up going back to him for a little bit. Partly just because he didn't have any hesitations about sleeping with me. That's 100% what it was. And I know so many people that they're like, yeah, I went back to the ex or the person that accepted the herpes. And I'm like, yeah, of course, because you're human. And you're out there getting like kicked in the face every day. And you're like, well, I just want to have sex. I want to feel normal. Like, I don't care if this person treated me badly. But yes, from him, I think it was like a year till I had sex with somebody else. Like, I got back with him. That ended again. And then I was like, found someone that, I don't know, I went on a couple dates with. They liked me. We started just like hooking up. But then even with that guy, it was something of like, the sex wasn't great, but I was willing to stay around just because I was having sex. And like being with him then taught me like, no, it's important for like someone to go down on me and like other things like that matters. But again, at the start, you're like, I'm just so happy to be intimate with somebody.
To get anything. Yeah. No.
And at least have someone be like, I know you have herpes and I don't care. But at the end of the day, I'm like, no, you do care, because you're not doing certain things.
Right. And there's also like, I feel like anything psychologically during sex that like takes you out of the moment that maybe you're like thinking of or like worried about is like rough. So like if you're with someone who doesn't really get herpes and they don't really understand that like it is pretty low of a chance to get it if like the person's not having an outbreak and you're taking precautions and stuff. But if you don't know that, you could be having like the most tense sex of your life.
Yeah, like I've had to be very patient because I get it.
Mm-hmm.
With kind of each new partner. Usually it takes a couple times because they're just a little bit freaking out in their head.
Yeah.
But yeah, also it's like, I don't know how to phrase it, but it's like, you got to look out for your own happiness. And at a certain point, it's like, listen, if you're not cool with this, like, you're not cool with it. And if you're not ever going to be comfortable with it, like, I can't make you.
And I'm not going to force you. And I'm also not going to take the effort. Like, there's something in like taking the energy out of yourself to make somebody else comfortable that you're like, well, now where's my energy? Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't feel hot anymore because I just had to explain to you that I'm still fuckable. There was something that Joe List said when we interviewed him, which is like him and Sarah Tolomash have been married for such a long time and she doesn't have herpes.
No, exactly. Like I've never given it to anybody, and you're actually more likely to get it from someone that doesn't know they have it, because they're not aware of like any little signs, or even just like, you know, as women, there's always something going on down there, right?
Yeah.
So like if you don't know you have herpes, you might be like, oh, I think I just slightly have a yeast infection or something. Or you're just like, oh, that's weird, I have a little tingling. But like that actually could be a sign that you're like shedding and can pass it to somebody. Yeah. But if you don't know, you don't know. So like even like me, I'm like, if something just feels a little off down there, I'm like, I'll take meds for a couple days, see if that like kind of fixes it. And then if it doesn't, I'm like, okay, this is something else, you know?
What was the first test like?
What do you mean test of
when you got tested and like found out? Like,
okay, so this is why it's so important if you get an outbreak to get tested immediately, and you can do it at a gyno or dermatologist or even a walk-in. But the walk-in didn't have a swab, and that's actually the most accurate test to get, especially in terms of which type you have. Because I've had people take the blood test, they go positive for 2, then they're positive for 1, then they're positive for 2. It's not 100% accurate. So I originally got the blood test a week later. That came back like on a Monday, and it was negative. So they were like, you just got it. So that also partly was like, okay, this is definitely from my most recent partner. Yeah. And then Monday I got the swab. That came back positive type 1. And then every year when I get my testing, it's been positive for type 1. So yeah, it's like either the blood test, but if it's new, your antibodies aren't there. But then the bright side of the blood test is if you've had it for a bunch of years, there's like a number they give you to show how active it is in your blood, like how active the antibodies are. And that number tells you kind of, did you get it recently? Have you had this for a long time? Because one guy I was
So then you know who you can blame.
Yeah, kind of. Or one guy I was with, we slept together. He didn't tell me. He went and got a herpes test like the next week. He was positive for type 1, but the doctor was like, no, according to this number, you've had this for years. Like, have you ever had a cold sore? And he's like, I think I did in like middle school. And he's like, oh, you didn't get this from this girl. Like, you already have it. But then it was kind of this bright side of like, look, we both have it. You can't get it twice. Like,
oh my God,
then
totally.
Suddenly there wasn't a problem with the sex, you know?
Yeah. No, and that blame thing I said before, that is a joke, but also there are so many times that I feel like people have said that they have an STD in the wrong way to someone. For instance, when that boy gave me chlamydia, the first thing he said to me was, you gave me chlamydia.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
I did not. I had just come out of a relationship with my boyfriend of 3 years, you know, and so besides that he was wrong, that is not how you approach someone that you're delivering news like that it's like, hey, you have something that you're going to need a medical professional to check out. Also, you did it to me. Like, don't do that. How would you say is like the right way to go about being like, hey, I have an STD or an STI? Like,
okay, so I feel like there's 2 parts. So let's go to like guy that gave it, quote, the giving it to somebody, which is technically incorrect. I actually didn't do that when I told him. I was just like in a panic. I was freaked out. I'm like, what are you doing tonight? I need to talk to you. And he's like, are you okay? And I was like, no. He called me. I was like in the cab back to work from the appointment. And I just like, I couldn't talk. I was just like crying. And he was like, are you okay? Did someone hurt you? I was like, no. I was
no.
Like, I was like, I'm going back to work. I'll text you. Like, I was like, I can't talk.
Mm-hmm.
And when I told him, my basically was like, listen, I had a couple bumps. Now it's like full blown outbreak.
Mm-hmm.
I got into the doctor. It's herpes. And I was like, you need to go get tested. That's what I said. I didn't blame him. I was like, I don't know. I'm like, they say I just got it recently, because he immediately was like, how do you know you got this from me? And I had to bite
but you hadn't
my tongue
said that
so hard, because I was like, you motherfucker. Like, but I just was like, look, you're the only new partner I've had in a year. So I was like, but can you just please go get tested? That's all I said. I was like, just go get tested. Like, let's confirm it is you, because there is some wild chance that it's from somebody else.
I'm looking out for you, ultimately.
Right. Yeah. Or also, I'm kind of like, I just want the confirmation, you know?
Yeah.
Or
how
like,
careful do
know.
I have to be the next time that we have sex? Because I wouldn't want to transmit it to you if you don't want it.
Right. Exactly. But, you know, like most men, he was just like, oh, well, at least you're not pregnant. It's like, also, that would be a we thing. That wouldn't be a me thing. That would be a we.
Yeah.
Like the whole, like, you gave me chlamydia, I gave you chlamydia, or whatever. It's like, no. We had sex.
Made a baby.
We consented to this. We both put ourselves at some type of risk for both pregnancy and STDs. So this is technically nobody's fault. It's only someone's fault if they know and they don't tell you.
Totally. And that's literally how most people get it, is if somebody didn't tell them, and mostly if that person themselves didn't even know.
Someone gave me chlamydia on purpose.
What?
Yeah. Like, I was hooking up with this guy, and we had been having, he's like the only person I was hooking up with for a while. We've been having unprotected sex for like a month. And like one time I just like, we were having sex and I just was not into it. And like, I don't know, I didn't feel a connection anymore. And I just like, I think I'm gonna go home. So I stopped in the middle, I got up. And then he goes, hey, have you been tested recently? And I was like, no. Is there something that I should know about after we've been having sex for a month and a half unprotected?
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know, it's just good to get tested. And then 2 weeks later, my kidney was infected and I was in the emergency room with extreme kidney pain because I was asymptomatic. Until one day I tried to pee and it felt like it was a hose with like a stone stuck inside the hose. So I thought I had kidney stones, but it was actually the chlamydia had worked its way all the way up to my kidney because I was asymptomatic for so long.
Oh my God.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
Like, some people I think are not the best and don't tell people, which is, don't do that. Like, that is just so very rude. You should just at least tell them. I know rejection can be hard.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, we're being 100% honest. I have slept with people and not told them.
You have?
Yeah. So like, I'm not perfect either.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
So, I mean, I agree with what you say. I should have.
But
like, I'm not arguing with you, but I'm
Yeah.
if I'm being fully honest, there were times I didn't. And part of it is because, you know, you're human. And if anything, it made me understand, like, the guy that gave it to me claims he didn't know, but he could have.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if he did, I kind of get it. Like, because then it turns out I went and essentially put other people at risk and I shouldn't have. And it's
totally
not right. But, you know, I did eventually tell him, though. I felt bad.
Yeah.
That I basically went to hook up with him again, and I told him that time.
And did he care?
And then surprisingly, those two were people that were cool about it.
Awesome.
Right? So it kind of was like, oh, all right. I was all worried, and then I don't know. But there was the second half of your question, right? How do you tell a person? Okay. Well, I was given the advice when I first got it from a man. A man told me, he was like, just tell them, like, when you get to the sex part, like when you're about to hook up, tell them. Because his mind was like, no man about to get laid is going to turn you down.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, that never, ever worked for me.
No.
Not once was someone like, oh, okay. Like, if anything, it's like, it's kind of a halt situation.
Like, ooh, you let it get this far.
Yeah. Like, first they would be like, I can't believe you told me. And I think part of them was almost like, I kind of wish he didn't, because I was ready to go. And now we need to pump the brakes. And don't blame them for that, because if that was me, I would 100% be like, hold up. Like, I need to think about this.
Yeah.
Like, a little too much. But yeah, it's the hardest part about telling someone is like, you have to be comfortable telling them.
Totally.
And unfortunately, that takes time. So like, in year 4 of me having herpes, I've had less rejections, but because I'm more comfortable about it, and it's like, I got my little spiel down.
Yeah. A good spiel with a nice tone is effective.
Yeah, especially
little
if you're a woman
elevator
with
pitch.
herpes. Yeah, I'll give you the pitch. I'll give it right now. No, I was gonna say, if you're a woman, we do talk too much. We do. When you tell someone you have herpes, keep it short and simple. A lot of times dudes don't want too much info, and you kind of put it in their court because it's also like when you're with someone, it's like you're connecting like emotionally, and you're not like the information giver for them. So my line I say too is like, yeah, I'm here if you want to like ask me any questions. I'm like, but you probably would just feel more comfortable like asking your doctor about it, which is 1,000% true. They ask their doctor and their doctor goes, yeah, not a big deal at all. You're most likely not going to get it. And even if you do, you're fine. And you should be happy this person told you. Like, but a doctor saying that to you is way more than me saying it.
Yeah. Comedians, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares what we say?
All right. So you want my spiel?
I'd love the spiel.
Okay. You want to role play? You want to be...
Oh, Erica, you're so
like on a
beautiful. Wow, look at that
thanks.
Body. Did you play sports in college? I want to touch you.
You like these shoulders? Nice,
I do.
You want to see them later?
I do. Show me that shoulder.
Yeah. Well, before we go back to my place, I do feel like I should at least let you know it's not a big deal, but I did get herpes a couple years ago. I take the meds. We can use condoms. I've never given it to somebody, but obviously I like you. I would feel bad that if I didn't tell you before we hooked up. So I understand if you don't want to, but I still would like you to come over. We could just hang out.
I want to. I just have a question. Like, what kind of protection are we working with?
Oh, well, I take the meds, and if you use a condom, it's like 1% chance. It's basically nothing. But
cool.
I mean, I understand if you want to like take some time, think about it.
No. Are you on the pill?
I am on the pill, yeah.
Oh, I'm down. Herpes is not a big deal, Erica. Like, all of my friends have herpes. I just let you continue the spiel because I thought it was a good spiel.
Oh, well, thanks. I just couldn't in good conscience invite you over and not
totally
at least let you know.
You're a really nice person. I'm going to go down on you later.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Okay, yeah, no, that's a great spiel. And also, like, I think, like, getting comfortable with the spiel, what you were saying, is so important because it is how, like, you phrase stuff. Like, if we've had a lot of girls or vulva owners writing in being like, how do I incorporate sex toys, or how do I even tell my person that I've never come or whatever? And I'm like, it's kind of the angle that you tell them. It's like, hey, there's this, like, you could either do it really casually. Hey, there's this thing I'm working on and I really want to come. And like, it means nothing about you. Or you could do the broken thing, which is like what most people do at the start of their journey, where it's like, I'm really embarrassed and I've never done that or whatever. And then like that brings the vibe into it. It's like, I'm really embarrassed about herpes versus I have this thing. It is really no big deal. Here are the things I can tell you about it. Here's what I've already done to take precautions, like.
Yeah. And like the only, I guess, like leg up I would have for someone that's new with it is I have the stats of I've been with people since.
Yeah.
None of them ever got it. But even so, like the last person I really dated never officially would like be my boyfriend. And I looked back and I remember him once saying, if I like date you, are people going to assume that I also have herpes? And I was like, I mean, it's incorrect if they do. And I told them about Sarah and Joe, but I was like, but I can't control what people think. They might assume that, but it's not true.
Also, though, you're really making my thing about you. Like, it's the same conversation when somebody's like, if I date a trans woman, does that make me gay?
Yeah, it's like, it doesn't have anything to do with you. Or, I mean, ultimately that was my answer of like, you're never going to tell people you're dating me, are you? Like,
right. That feels bad. I don't want to feel like secret high school me. I don't know if you had to do that in high school too, but
right. Which
I was
like
kept a secret.
Like with each relationship, you do learn little things. So it's like that one taught me like, okay, yeah, if I'm dating you for like a couple months, it's like, okay, am I your girl or not? Like, I'm not going to do this dance of like not being claimed. And also like physical affection, like my love language changed a bit, that I'm like, oh, physicalness is now way more important to me than it was, because now when I'm in private with you, it's like, I need to feel wanted in that way. And if I'm always the one initiating, it feels like you don't want to be with me physically. And then I feel like it's because of herpes.
Totally.
Like, even if it's not, it's just like, like each thing kind of teaches you a little bit.
Totally. Do you remember how you viewed herpes before you had it?
I knew a girl that got it in college vaguely. We weren't tight. But essentially, I correlated it with people that are super promiscuous are typically the ones that get herpes. And that mainly comes from nobody talks about having it. Like when I came public about it, there were friends from my childhood that hit me up that I would never, ever guess got herpes. And they did.
Yep.
And it was like, oh, okay. And I felt like I was that for a lot of people. Like a lot of people would look at me being like, you who always uses condoms, always asks partners if they've been tested, like da-da-da. I'm like, oh, yeah, all the stuff I was supposed to do. And then I still got it. So I was like, yeah. Like, so I think a lot of times for anyone, and including people I tell, the ones that are cool about it are the ones that know someone that has it.
Totally.
And the ones that are blind to anybody having it are freaked out and kind of don't know how to react, or basically I think automatically to assume like you're super promiscuous. Which is unfortunate because it's not true.
And also, like, there used to be like way more of a stigma with promiscuity. Like now I think we can judge each other less for it, but it used to just be so baked into like who you are as a woman. Like if you're virtuous and if like you deserve to have someone love you, okay, go be a hot slut.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've gotten backlash for being public about it from even people in my own family being like, you know, like, we support you, we think this is great. They go, but like, what if you meet a nice guy, you know, from a nice family, but like they find out you're out there talking about herpes and sex, and like that's not, you know, that's not a lady. No one's gonna want a lady like that. And I'm like, well, I never was that lady. Like I might not have had herpes, but I was like, I would talk about sex openly with my friends. Like I'm like, you know, I'm a comedian. I'm like, it's kind of like you go on a podcast, there's no right, but it's hard for people that know you in a certain light to see you in certain ways. So obviously family, but even like I said, childhood friends, even like basketball teammates I had in college. It's like you knew me at a certain point in my life, and it's like, yeah, I'm a full adult and I could be open about sex and talk about it if I want. But coming from like a more conservative Italian Catholic family, it's like, no, we don't publicly do that, you know.
I was gonna ask, who was the first person in your family that you told?
Technically, my parents, because when the podcast was coming out, I ended up sending them an email because I kept trying to talk to them, just the two of them, but our family's so huge that there'd be someone around. Yeah. And then it's that same thing of me being like, I didn't want to make a big deal of like, I need to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. But I had a lot of shame from like, I'm going to be public about this and I know people are going to talk about it and I don't care. But obviously I'm my parents' kid. So it's like, their friends are going to hear about it, and it's like they're all on social media, they see it, you know. So I felt really bad about I was like, I don't want to bring like shame or embarrassment to the family. I was like, but I'm doing this and I think I could really help people, and I hope you see that angle. Right. But I felt bad because it was like, yeah, for a while walking around our hometown, you're probably going to feel like, is everyone listening? Who's listening? Yeah, everyone knows our daughter has herpes. When in reality it was kind of the opposite. My mom had a lot of friends tell her like, oh, I have it, like, good for Erica, like, you know. But my mom was like, I didn't know. Right. Like, so it's like for every person that's like, hey, I have it and I think this is great, there's probably gonna be someone hating on it. Totally. But I kind of was like, let them listen, you know. If anything, my mom feels more uncomfortable when people go, I love Erica's podcast, listen to it all the time. Like, too dirty for her, you know. Well,
so Ariel Elias, who was on season 1, we did a recording where like her mom was in town and she has herpes. And she was like, can I bring my mom to the recording? And I was like, yeah, of course. And that recording ended up getting trashed. Thank God, because my father was also on it and gave like the worst sex advice ever.
Oh God.
And my foot like unplugged the recording. And so it is gone forever, forever, forever. Thank God. But what was good about that episode was Ariel was talking about her herpes and when she found out, and we kind of had this like mother-daughter bonding moment because her mom was like, initially when you told me, I thought it meant something bad about me as a parent, like that I had done something wrong.
I mean, that was the same of when my mom found out that I had sex for the first time.
Right.
She was like, I don't think I've talked to you enough about sex. And because I wasn't dating someone and it wasn't like my boyfriend and I wasn't in love. And I just was like, look, me and you are different people. I was like, we're different. I was like, I wasn't going to wait till marriage. I wasn't, you know, I was like, I wanted to. I felt comfortable with this person, and I did. I said, I don't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And then she was almost kind of like, why don't you feel kind of bad about it? And I was like, she grew up going to Catholic school being told don't and no. And I said, well, you raised me not to be that way. I was like, so, I was like, it was my decision. And if anything, I was mad because she read my text messages and found out. And I was like, you snooped. I was like, you snooped through my stuff. I was like, so I go, you're going to snoop. You're not going to find stuff you like. I was like, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And I was like, and you have no right to be mad. You look through my things. And I was mad because I said to her, we could have bonded over that sometime. Like, I was like, that could have been a bonding thing for us.
Yeah.
So I was like, you kind of overstepped my trust,
Yeah.
Like, I was the friend in my high school group that when I started masturbating, I started asking everyone if they were.
Okay.
And everyone was lying to me too. Like, I'd be like, do you masturbate? And they'd be like, no. Do you? And I was like, yeah. And then they're like, oh, me too. I just didn't want to be looked at as weird. And I'm like, you're my friend. Don't lie to me.
Why would you do that? Yeah.
You're my best friend and you're leaving me in the dark. I'm like, when did you start? I just figured this shit out. Like, you could have been giving me tips, man,
Literally. How old were you?
Right. But like 15, I was like a sophomore in high school. I remember being like, that's the best. Like, you wake up in the middle of the night, can't fall asleep, rub one out, back to sleep, like, but it was such I remember being like, no one told me how to do it. So like I had to figure it out. And then I was like telling everybody, I'm like, hey, my mom in her group of friends growing up, still to this day, was the person no one would talk to about sex. She was like the saint. And even though she's the nicest, sweetest person, it was like, because people felt they were more promiscuous than her. They're like, well, I'm not going to share stuff with her. Now that I have the podcast, now those friends are like talking to her about stuff. Or it's like, it's kind of this double-edged sword where I think kind of like your mom, she almost felt like, I felt so bad you felt like you couldn't tell me. But at the same time, I'm like, but you're the one telling me to keep quiet about it.
Totally.
So it's kind of like, I can't win with you. It's like she was a little jealous when I went to therapy for a while. Kind of like, what's wrong? You could talk to me. And I'm like, yeah, you're not a licensed professional. Like, I know I could talk to you, but
you're not objective.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm like, if anything, I was like, I want a man, someone opposite from my mom. I was like, if I wanted to talk to you, I would. But I want to talk to someone that's a completely different perspective,
Totally. First time coming was you were like 15?
Yeah, so first time by myself, I was about like 15. And I had, I don't know if anyone else had this thing. It was like a toy that was like this pen that would like do little circles. So it almost like...
Was it a pen or a toy?
It was a pen. It literally was a pen. It was like part of some like arts kit I had. And it would like vibrate and the pen would like make these little swirls. So it almost like made fancier writing. I don't know. It was just this weird little thing. And I never thought anything of it. And I remember
it's a very
I was, like,
90s toy.
Yeah, it's a very like, this was the 90s. There's no cell phones. We're playing with a vibrating pen. Like, look how cool this is, right? And I remember I was cleaning up my room and I think I threw it in my nightstand drawer. And I don't remember my thought process, but I remember trying to masturbate and being like, I don't know what this is, because a man told me and they're like, you just, stick your fingers up there. Turns out not what you do.
Not what you do.
Right. So I was like, this is dumb. I don't get it. And then it was like months later, I don't know what made me screw around with that toy, but I was like, this toy vibrates. And the opposite end of it was where it vibrates, so not where the pen part is. And so I remember like kind of like touching myself with that, being like, wow, this feels like really good. But that taught me like, oh, your clitoris is what needs the action. Even though I didn't know what a clitoris was, I remember watching that Seinfeld episode of the woman's name that rhymes with a female body part with my dad. And at the end, it's like, she's like, Dolores, and he figures it out.
He's
and
like,
I remember sitting there going, I don't get it. Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, to my dad, I remember going, I don't get it, because my dad laughed. And he just was like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, so even then, no one told me what clitoris meant, let alone I was masturbating. So I first learned with that toy, and then I just figured it out like with my hand. And to this day, I typically just use my hand because I'm very nervous of like, I know people that use vibrators so much that then they can only come with a vibrator.
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
this is a tip I've been giving people who have been attempting with toys or with their hands or whatever. And we talked about this early season 1. So we need a refresher. But even though the clit itself is tiny, there are different parts of it that are more sensitive to you. For instance, if I rub the right side, nothing's going to happen. It is upper left-hand quadrant. And for some people, if it's like you haven't figured that out, it might feel like a little annoying, but like it's there.
Oh, I have a theory. Most people have a side in general on your body. Like there's a lot of people that are like left nipple versus right nipple.
Yep.
For me, it's like right side of my neck versus left side. Like left side, I don't feel much. Right side's nuts,
Oh, I love that.
Like, so like I think most people are sided a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say the other thing too, like in terms of coming with a partner,
Mm-hmm.
that happened. I think I was like 24,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something like I had guys go down on me before. It always felt really good, but I never was like on edge of orgasming, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know. And then I had one guy that just shifted me to like sitting on his face when we were hooking up.
Nice.
And I didn't even know that was what it was called. But all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, this feels 1,000 times better. And to this day, like I pretty much can only come like that way, not on my back. And
that is such
now,
a position I picture you in.
Right? No, but it's so funny that like I didn't figure it out really till like the past 2 years. Part of the reason is like a lot of dudes, they try to do it really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically like with me, but I think also with most women, it's like you either need a lot of pressure very hard, like a vibrator, like or hands, or you need very light.
Mm-hmm.
And so as great as it's been the movement of like dudes wanting to go down and eat pussy, it's like I've had to tell a lot of partners like, no, just like light. Like I was like, just very light. That's what gets me. Like I love the enthusiasm. I love that you want to get in there, but
like an ice cream, not a sandwich.
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah. Don't bite. Just for women, if you don't come on your back, I'm like, just tell your man you want to sit on his face. They think it's really hot, and they won't even know that you're just controlling it a little more. Like they'll just know like, oh, this gets her off, and then they'll love it.
Yeah, they don't need to know that you are a powerful bitch. No, I was going to ask about that though, because you played sports in college. Has that ever, and specifically basketball, has that ever intimidated guys?
I mean, I'm not a believer of like all the time when women are like, I have a good job, I have this, I do that, like it intimidates men. It's like, no, I don't think so. I don't think it does. I mean, I guess in the sense that there's some guys maybe that wouldn't sleep with me just because I'm tall.
Yeah.
I'm taller than them, but I'm like, well, I also, being tall, I'm 5'11". I've slept with a handful of guys that are very tall, like 6'8", 6'6", 6'5", whatever. But I've also slept with a handful of guys that were a little bit shorter than me. Oh, I'm not bragging about those dudes, because this is what I've learned. The shorter the dude, usually the better in bed. And that's all I'm going to say. If anything, I've learned that tall athletes are usually the worst. Is my experience with being an athletic woman. I guess I've been around a lot of athletic men. And a lot of times it's like, you guys have always gotten girls. You never really had to learn. You could hook up with one, there's another one on the door. And it's like, no, the guy that rode the bench, that's your athlete. That's the athlete you want.
The water boy.
Yeah. You want the manager of the team. You know what I mean? Like,
totally. Anybody who's actually had to work for it.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, because they know what it's like to like get something one time and then not get it again for months. So their brain's like, how do we keep this person coming back?
Yeah, love it.
Or maybe a business owner, someone that knows how to get repeat customers. You know what I mean?
That's the hardest part of sales.
Yeah, like, and I'm not saying all tall athletes are bad, but it's just funny to me when some women will be like, nah, I need a guy that's like 6'3", 6'5". I'm like, well, have fun never having an orgasm. So that sounds mean, but whatever.
Also, I just wanted to highlight herpes. What is the worst thing that can happen from herpes? Because this is something that we talked about on the live show where I kind of had like an epiphany.
The worst thing? Like
the
health-wise?
The worst thing, yes.
Health-wise? Nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
There's literally, that's why it's not in routine STD testing, is because it affects your mental health more than your physical health. So it's like, you don't need to know. I've known guys that slept with someone that had herpes, went to get a test, and the doctor was like, you'd probably just rather not know. Like, he was like, you don't have an outbreak? Don't worry about it. Like, they basically like the mental strain you're going to go through, or then with telling partners, which is crazy, because it's like, well, if everyone today went out and got a herpes test, and like the numbers would be even higher of how many people have it.
Yeah.
It's like the stigma wouldn't be as bad. Like if anything, there's more health effects of if you take the meds every day. That could lean to like your liver or kidneys.
Oh, okay.
No, like physically. Like, so that was partly why I was like, okay, I'm not going to take this every day if I don't have to, right? God forbid. Like then I have a kidney fail, and I'm like, what? Because I was worried about herpes. Like now my life's on the line,
Yeah.
And then in terms of real life, it's like, I guess the worst thing is someone just rejects you.
Yeah. And that hurts
you can
emotionally.
Be rejected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
you
does
can be rejected
happen,
for so many reasons.
Like I can't, yes. But with HPV, like if I don't go in once a year and get checked and maybe have a colposcopy, which is something where they hole punch the inside of your cervix, test it. This disgusting like skin comes out like a week later. It's really the worst process. I can get cervical cancer.
Exactly.
Like that, I think is way scarier, more long-term than herpes, you know, like.
Same with like if you have chlamydia and you don't figure that out and you don't get it treated, that can make you infertile. It could give you cervical cancer. Same with syphilis is another one that often doesn't show in women. Which is why it's like that's why we have the yearly gyno check, because there's many STDs that don't show for us that do show for men. And
yeah, and a
we
lot
know
of the
we
times,
can't trust men. So
well, yeah, or if the men like they sometimes don't have any symptoms from it. They could just be a carrier a lot of the time.
Well,
And
HPV for sure, yeah.
HPV, they're just shooting
There's
it
no
into
way for them to know,
everybody.
yeah.
Pew, 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 pew. Like,
yeah, unless you have warts, you don't know as a man.
so that was a big, it's not like, oh, HPV is so much worse than her. And I don't think there should be like this like hierarchy or whatever, but it's like, it's interesting to me that herpes got this like horrible rap when so many other STIs can like really contribute to your health failure.
It's because in school you just learn herpes is forever. You learn AIDS and herpes are forever. So you kind of in your mind put them on the same level, where you're like, herpes and AIDS, if I get that, there's no fix.
And children.
That's the rest of my life.
Children are
and
forever.
That's how and that's how I felt when I got it. I was like, you just ruined your life. That's how I felt. Like I was like, you don't have a boyfriend, you haven't had a boyfriend in years, now you have herpes, like good fucking luck out there. Like type of thing, which is like, it's sad to think, but it was like I suddenly was like, man, I gotta like be so hot for anyone to want to have sex with me. Like I need to be amazing level hot. Like I dropped like 10 pounds and I was already like in some of the best shape of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was already like, I'm like, I was 25, but like, but it was bad. Like I spent so much money on like clothes and makeup and stuff that just wasn't me. But I just felt like I need to be so hot. But it was to the point, like anywhere I went, someone would be like, where are you going?
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? It's just me. It's just me, Erica.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, this isn't. They're like, where are you going? What do you have
like,
a date?
No,
what is
we've
this?
known you before.
Like, yeah. They're like, no, we know who you are. This ain't it. Like,
yeah. And that gets into like dangerous territory. Like anytime that you're trying to like just be someone else fully for someone to like you. Cause then it's like, how quickly can I actually shed this facade and show you and will you still like me then? Like I do think this podcast, your podcast, like having an STI, not being able to come, having something where like you can talk about something openly that is kind of taboo is a great litmus test for the type of person that you're going to be fucking, because if they are really nice and understanding about it, you're like, okay, cool. Like you've been like at least around the block to like not judge me.
Yeah. And it's the same of like, even if you are with someone and you want to talk to them about certain things, especially like maybe spicing things up, or you're like, hey, like I haven't been getting off. Like sometimes those conversations are even harder once you are sleeping with someone or seeing them, because it's like, it's a blow to the ego.
Yeah.
And I'm sympathetic for anybody in that situation, because it's like, like I had a man tell me recently that like I didn't know what I was doing in bed. And I was like, well, what do you like? Like I was like, you want to teach? Then teach. Like I'm here for it, you know? And then like I remember he didn't have any critique, so I'm like, well, if you don't tell me, if you don't like get specific, like I'm not gonna know.
Like you just wanted to insult me?
Yeah, like but it was something that he, you know, I think came from a good place. He was like, he's like, I wanted to say something that I don't want to offend you, but he kind of said something of like, oh, I'm gonna teach you. I was like, all right, then teach me.
And then it's
like my ears are open, like you know, because it's like it's the same of like with women. If you were like, okay, he goes down on me, but he doesn't get me off, and he's not doing it right, and it's like, well, do you know what does it? Like,
yeah, or do you just tap him on the head?
Yeah, do you just like call it quits?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, it's up to all parties involved. So when we're talking like safety, I just wanted to point out that yes, condoms are good, but like we said, not 100% effective, because herpes, because it's a skin condition, can spread to the outer areas or stuff. So probably the best way to prevent it is watching it and taking your meds.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
That's really it, because it's like also to get technical, women are more likely to get it because you have more surface area. So it's also something of like when people are like, what do you mean condoms don't, you know, protect? It's like, well, it's not an exchange of fluids that transmits it, like the way chlamydia is or other STDs, which is another health class thing you learn, like condoms stop STDs, and it's like not herpes necessarily. But it's like basically if you were like somewhat shedding or something or an outbreak and use a condom. If a dude's balls touch your area, then they'll get herpes on their balls. Like, so they'll still have it, you know?
And their balls will touch your area if you're doing it right.
Yeah, it gets in there, you know?
I love when the balls touch my area. Can you masturbate with an outbreak?
I mean, it would be very painful, but you technically can.
Yeah.
When you have the outbreak, it's like it hurts to pee, it hurts to shower. It's a little tip for either or. If you have an outbreak, one thing that helped me was like put on a pair of underwear, fill a water bottle up, like a plastic water bottle, freeze the water bottle, use that as like an ice pack. It perfectly fits like right in between your legs.
Okay, so the most common STIs, just so everybody knows, are, and I think this is in order, HPV, hello, chlamydia, hello again, gonorrhea, never had that one. It's a bacterial STI. People get it with chlamydia a lot. Symptoms are similar: unusual discharge from the vag or peen, pain or burning when you pee. Most people with penises with gonorrhea get symptoms, but only about 20% of people with vulvas do. So that's one that's flipped, that it's like the penises will get symptoms. Syphilis is pretty common. It's a disease with 4 stages. Primary stage, or it's an infection with 4 stages. In the primary stage, the main symptom is a sore. Sometimes it is called the great imitator because the sore can look like a cut, an ingrown hair, or a harmless bump. Then it's like a rash. Only about 15% of people with untreated syphilis will develop the final stage. In the later stage, it causes organ and nerve damage. So that's another one that actually like can fuck with your body down the line untreated, besides just giving it to other people. Trichomoniasis, what is this? Spread from genital to genital contact. Only about...
There's something... Crap, I should have looked this up right before. This is something...
This one is more vulvas than penises.
Okay. There's something that this is... Crap, I need to look this up.
Look it up. I'm just... Okay,
so...
Yeah.
There's something of like, you know how often you're with a new partner, a lot of times as a woman, you'll get like BV or maybe a yeast infection. Something just gets off every once in a while, right? I had a
bacterial
friend,
vaginosis.
She was with this guy for like, she's like marrying him. They've been together years. She would keep getting like BV or yeast, but every time she would go to the doctor, they would just easily be like, yeah, you know, you're a woman. That's what it is. It just happens.
Yeah.
But she was like, I'm with the same partner for years. This shouldn't keep happening. Like something's wrong. Then eventually he got like something tested, and there is a type of like male, it's technically a slight STD that's a bacterial thing that was causing her to keep having those like bacterial reactions.
Yeah.
I believe it starts with a P. I'm like, crap. I could text her right now to get the name.
Psoriasis? No, I'm just kidding.
But she was like, she messaged me. She was like, tell everyone this on your podcast. Like, she was like,
yeah. And you're like, I'm going to forget what it's called, but down.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, this one, trichomoniasis, is mostly vulvas, but you know, the penises are getting them too if it's genital to genital contact. Only about 30% of people with trichomoniasis have symptoms, including itching, burning, or sore genitals. You also might see a smelly, clear, white, yellowish, or greenish discharge. Yeah, anytime you see a discharge that's a wrong color, it could be BV, it could be an STI, but like go get it checked. It should never be weird. And like weird is different for every person. Like I know that my normal color is like a clearish yellow. So like if I'm seeing that, I'm not going to the doctor. But like the second you see maybe like brown or like green or like maybe it's like more mucusy than normal.
Yeah, brown and a smell is usually BV.
Yeah. And then HIV AIDS is also a common one. People, I seem to think AIDS is over. It is very much not over. HIV is the virus that can cause AIDS. So a lot of people don't even move on to having full-blown AIDS if they get their HIV under control, which is really great. But yeah, I think AIDS and HIV deserve their own episode. But yeah.
Well, it's something that like with PrEP now for HIV, I'm almost like, yeah, if you made something like that for people with herpes, it would lower the stigma so much.
Totally.
I had a gay friend that had herpes, and he was like, people won't have sex with me, but they'll have sex with men with HIV because PrEP exists. And it's like, it's almost like just a mental placebo in a way of like, oh, I take this, so I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
Same way, like,
And the representation in
mean we're okay.
commercials, like the fact that like you see PrEP commercials all the time and you're like, okay, that person looks like me. Okay, this relationship looks like mine. Like this makes me feel a little more normal.
Yeah, I mean, that's why when I joined that support group that was just like all women that had it, it was like only 12 people. But when I walked in the door, I just felt like this immediate relief where I was like, oh, there's a bunch of women that are just like me that got it, type of thing. And then I actually ended up starting like my own group with a couple of girls from there, just because it was really expensive. It was run by like a therapist. It was great. But we were like, we can't afford this all the time. And we were like, we could just get together every once in a while. And then we were like, let's just make a meetup group and see who joins. And it's like every week I get people finding it, messaging. And now with COVID, it's just virtual. So now we're like having people from all over join. And it's so great of like, it's a combo of people that have had it for years still having like obstacles with it. And then of course, people that just got it. But the number one thing that made me feel better was just like knowing other, not only women, but single women. The only people that are typically open about it are ones that are in relationships or married, because it's kind of like, I won.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, look what I did.
Yeah. Right. But it's like being in this group is great because you're like, oh, everyone else is in here getting rejected, like dealing with all this stuff. Like you want people in the trenches with you a little bit, you know?
Totally.
Like, I'm like, I don't want this pep talk from this, like, oh, I'm married. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I have herpes and a husband. I'm that great.
Yeah. I'm like, shut up. I don't want to hear it from you.
Totally. Wait, so where can people find the group? Because I'm sure we have a lot of people listening that are like, I would love to be a part of that.
Yeah. So if you want, send an email to herpesgroupnyc@gmail.com. It's not just NYC based anymore. Or if you send me a DM, I'll send you like the link, because I have some people join the meetup group. It's private. No one will see you're in the meetup group, but still a lot of people will be like, can you just email me the details? So I have like an email list and the public group. But yeah, essentially if you search my name and meetup, it would pop up.
Oh, that's so good. It's so nice to have like a little community that can have each other's backs.
Yeah, and a lot of times like we end up not even talking about herpes all the time.
Why would you? Because you're multifaceted people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was going to say the nice thing about like a group, if you like, I encourage you to search wherever you are on Meetup. You'll be surprised at what you can find, different groups. Or especially like there's a lot of times in general STD ones, so not maybe herpes specific, but it's like, man, it's just nice to feel like you have people in your corner kind of like rooting for you. Like that's the exciting part of like, we come back next month and it's like, oh, you were going to tell that guy. How did that go? Like, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, we fucked.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, it went well. I'm leaving group. Bye forever.
Don't need you anymore.
Right.
Are there, I feel like I've heard of these, but I've never actually looked into them. Maybe Gabrielle, while I'm rambling, you could see if there are any, but are there dating apps that can match people based on STIs?
Okay, so there's positive singles, which you can specify like I have herpes, or I think HIV AIDS is also common on there. Here's the negative. You have to pay for it.
Oh.
There's no free version. And number two, nobody puts like pictures or like a lot of info about themselves, because everyone's terrified of being seen on the website, which is crazy. And I literally sent emails to like Hinge and stuff being like, listen, you should make an STD filter.
Yeah.
I was like, because it could even be something that only gets it like disclosed if you both have it.
Yes. Yes.
And I was like, what a hell of a conversation starter. Like, you know, just like, hey, by the way, you're both have herpes. It's like, oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay. That's already, or it's like, I could set that as a filter. I could be like, you know what? Only show me other guys that have herpes.
Yeah. I don't feel like having a rejection conversation this week.
Right. Or it's like, you know, I know people that they only date through the positive singles. They're so terrified to ever have to have the conversation, which if that's what you're comfortable with, do that. But I'm almost like a stubborn bitch where I'm like, no, you know what? Just because I have herpes doesn't mean I need to be with someone with herpes. Like I can be with whoever I want to be with.
100%.
But still, it would be a plus side.
It shouldn't be a limit. It should be like an additional thing that it's like I can match with guys who don't. And then when they do, then I just get a notification, and it can make just our first date a little easier.
Right. And like as much as I'm public about it, like if you look at my Instagram, you'll figure out that I have herpes. I've yet to be so public that I put it on a dating profile. And some people would argue like you should or you shouldn't. And I'm like, well, that's only something that comes up if you're going to be physical with somebody. Because like so much people will stress like they're going on a date with someone and they're already like, how do I tell them I have herpes? I'm like, go on
How do
the
you
date.
know you're going to like how they even smell? Yeah.
I'm like, you got to date like you don't have it at first, because it's more like, no, do you like this guy?
Mhm.
Or even like, I've had you tell someone you have herpes, they're cool with it. And you're like, well, now I'm only dating this guy because he's cool with herpes. I don't really like him.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like unfair to everybody. So it's like you have to kind of date like you don't have it, because so many times it's like you go on a first date, you don't care if there's a second date, and you're like, I was worried about herpes for nothing. You're like, I didn't even make out with that guy. Like,
and making out can transmit it only if there's an outbreak as well.
Pretty much, yeah.
Kissing.
But technically, no, because if I got it from someone that had it orally,
right, you didn't know.
I don't know. So like I like to tell a story, but I also feel bad because people are like, wait, there can be no signs and you can get it, and I'm like, well, yes.
Yeah, but it's ultimately like, don't live in fear. Try and be as honest as possible with the people that you are seeing, and don't like have it be like a judgment call about you as a person, because literally someone could have, I mean, not that sex should ever be a judgment call, but like just to assume that somebody is promiscuous from having herpes is like, don't do that.
No, and I know people that they got it from their first time.
Yeah.
And that like and then that makes me feel lucky that I got it at 25. I'm like, I can't imagine the first time I have a sexual encounter having any STD or any negative thing. Or a lot of people, you know, are assaulted the first, you know, sexual encounters they have. It's like, I hear all those stories. I'm like, that's crazy, because I'm like, I was 25. I was having orgasms with partners, and still I got knocked so far down, and it took me so long to like finally feel like I was normal again with sex, or even with every new partner. Sometimes there's that period. So I'm just like, yeah, it really, there's no correlation between promiscuity or not.
Yeah.
Or some people get it from like their husband. It's like, oh, are they a whore?
Yeah.
Like, you know?
No, I think everyone's very lucky to have you as a spokesperson who is so open about it and has like given this space for other people to feel normal, because I don't know, it's like me coming out as anorgasmic. Like, people look at us and they think normal girl.
Yeah, right.
And we are. That's the thing, is these things that are going on are normal. It's just like a society that has made us feel like we can't talk about them.
Yeah, and if you want to be promiscuous, be promiscuous. Just use protection. That's like really the only thing I can tell you. Use protection and ask your partners if they've been tested or whatnot. Like, because if anything, when I got herpes, I was like, remember all those times you didn't act promiscuous, even though like you kind of wanted to. Like I kind of regretted all the sex I didn't have.
Totally.
I was like, man, you should have lived that up before, because now you got to disclose an STD. So
we're going to talk about infertility in an upcoming episode, but I have a friend who, like, when she found out she couldn't have kids, she's like, I should have fucked so much. And I'm like,
yeah, or like all the years I spent in fear, and then here's where I ended up. Yeah. And I think it's a fear a lot of women have. I've thought about that. Like, when I finally start trying to get pregnant and it can't happen, I'm like, man, all that money I spent on birth control and stuff, you know?
Not worth it. But no, just kidding. You guys stay on birth control. It's totally worth it. Also, try not to fuck during COVID. Like, I'm sorry. I don't know how to tell single people this, because it's like, but I'm not fucking either. Like, you guys know I'm not fucking, right? So it's fine.
Well, just, you know, the bright side about COVID is kind of makes people have that define the relationship question. That happened for my co-host Molly indirectly. The guy was just like, look, I'm not being with other people. Like, I know with COVID, it's like, he's like, I didn't want you to feel unsafe of like, well, are you like making out with a bunch of other girls or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's getting men to commit.
I like it. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I need to hear about Molly's journey now, because your podcast, Shooters Gotta Shoot, it is all about shooting your shot. And if you get rejected, hey, it's okay. Shoot it again. And you could end up in love or fucking.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. It basically is like all the books and everything tell women to like sit back, let men come to you, and our philosophy is like, that doesn't work for us. So sometimes you got to make moves. So
it doesn't work for anybody. That narrative is so detrimental. I used to just be like, okay, look as pretty and tiny as possible, and someone's gonna fall in love with you from afar. No.
Yeah,
you have a wonderful personality. Force it on people.
Right?
Yeah. Erica Spera, it has been so lovely having you here.
No, thanks. Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Of course. Can you tell everybody where they can find you and your podcasts?
Yep. So my podcast is anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's called Shooters Gotta Shoot. And you can find me on all social media at Sperica, SPERICAA, 2 A's. And I have another podcast called What's Up Cuz that is more, if you're a fan of the Cake Boss show, it's like all behind the scenes stuff of Cake Boss and that family. And again, you can find that wherever you listen to podcasts too. So.
And how are they related to your family?
They are my mom's first cousin. So
Sick.
I'm technically a cousin once removed is the technical term. Yeah.
I love it. You guys can find us at How Come Podcast and me at Remy Casimir. I would really like it if you followed me. I wanna have more. I want to have more followers. No,
you should. If you listen, follow Remy.
Yeah, I'm fine.
It's the easiest thing you can do. It's paying her without paying her. Just give her a follow. It's not hard. Also, her Instagram's very fun. Can I say this?
Yeah.
She put a lot of work into stories and shit. Like, she's mad artsy. She's doing graphics. I'm like, I just use the text that Instagram gives me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a simple bitch. But Remy, truly fun.
Is insane. And you can see my cat going outside. You can see what movies I like. It's really just a hodgepodge. But most importantly, rate, review, and subscribe this podcast because we'd like to see ourselves on the charts again. Erica, I have to ask this to every person after a sexual experience, which this has been. Did you finish?
Oh, I definitely finished. It's been a great time.
Okay, amazing. Gabrielle, did you finish?
I did finish.
Hooray. I finished too. Erica, thank you so much for coming.
I'll come again another time.
Oh, I'd love it. And oh yeah, if anybody has questions for Erica, would you be willing to come back for some Patreon follow-up?
Oh, for sure.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So yeah, if you want to see extras, go to patreon.com/howcome. That has this full unedited video. Erica, thank you again for coming. And we will see you next time on How Come. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
It's not you, it's me. I try so hard to finish honestly. They say you'll know when you go all the way from A right down to O. Oh no, I think that I still got a ways to go. Oh, I'm sick of this and I have got to know. How come? How come? How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help. 'Cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna just